I'd like to call to order this workshop of the Board of Supervisors on November 16, 2020. Tonight, we're continuing with our hybrid form of meetings where we're allowing some of you to come in with social distancing. And also, we'll have people that will be joining us again remotely. Mr. Smither, would you instruct folks how they can join us remotely?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. During the public comment period, you may raise your hand anytime with your Zoom controls using your screen or press *9 on your phone. And we'll be able to call on you from the front desk. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smither. And for those who are not with us here at the Village Building tonight, I'm going to briefly introduce who is here. To my left is Mr. Mike Byerly, our District 3 Supervisor. To my immediate left is Mr. Ned Smither, our County Administrator. To my far right is District 5 Supervisor, Ms. Karen Carmack. And to my immediate right is Mr. Bill Cox, District 4 Supervisor. I believe our District 2 Supervisor, Mr. Larry Norvik, is joining us remotely. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Yep, I'm here. Thank you. Hey, everybody.
Welcome. So with that, I would like to ask Mr. Bill Cox to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And Mr. Mike Byerly, would you do the invocation for us? Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dear Heavenly Father, we are so grateful for this opportunity to be together to discuss the business of the citizens of Powhatan County. We thank you so much for giving us this beautiful county, the lovely and beautiful sunny day. We've had much rain. We're thankful, but we're ready for some sunshine and we appreciate it. Thank you, Lord, for bringing these people here safely, and be sure that we all get home safe this evening. Amen.
Board members, do I have any requests to postpone agenda items and additions, deletions, or changes to the order of presentation tonight? If not, I will entertain a motion for formal approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Do I have a second? Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
County Administrator updates. Mr. Smither.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I appreciate the opportunity tonight to talk to you a little bit. I thought it might be helpful if we talked a little bit about the COVID-19 updates for the county, especially how it impacted the health of our residents throughout Powhatan. I'd like to start, if I could get thank you very much, presentations up on the screen. Yeah, since early August, we've seen a number of cases grow from 149 in Powhatan to 375. During the same period, we have had hospitalizations grow from 9 to 21. Let me advance the slide. The hospitalizations have grown from 9 to 21, and we've had 2 citizens pass away from COVID-19 since August. As a summary, approximately 1.3% of our citizens have tested positive, and 5.6% of those positive tests resulted in hospital stays. And you'll see that on the chart in orange. We've had 21 hospital stays and 6 deaths within the county. Powhatan has always tracked below state averages since March and the pandemic began, but we're experiencing slight upticks in cases as shown here by the yellow line on the next chart. This is a graph from the State Department of Health's website, and you can see the yellow line on the bottom right-hand side. That line is measuring 7-day averages of new daily cases. And you can see as recently, if you look down right above the November 1 on that chart, you'll see that we as a county were relatively low, and that's just 15 days ago. In the last 15 days, you'll see a pretty significant spike. And at this point in time, we're at the highest level we have been as a county since the pandemic began at at 5 per day, a little over 5 per day. Please don't let the number on the far right-hand side, the 18 count, scare you. That number is the computer was down at the state for approximately 3 days, and they accumulated the results. So that 18 is a computer glitch as opposed to a real count, but it does fall into the last 7-day average period. And so we are trending slightly higher since November 1. As you will see on the next chart, on this chart here, the Powhatan as 7-day average, 5 per day, and 174.7 count when you take that number and apply it to per 100,000 population. We obviously don't have 100,000 citizens in Powhatan, but in order to compare ourselves to other localities, they use a per $100,000 count. Excuse me, per 100,000 citizen count, and we're at 174.7 on that measurement. To give you a feel for how that compares to the state of Virginia, the state of Virginia is at 249.1 per 100,000 residents. Our local neighbor and rural neighbor next door, Goochland County, is slightly below us at 150.6. And Chesterfield County next door is 243.6. So we're below Chesterfield, slightly above Goochland, and below the state of Virginia as far as number of cases. But we are the 17th lowest locality in Virginia. Of the 133 localities in Virginia, our ranking is 17th lowest right now. But my takeaway from this information provided to you tonight is this, that although we're doing better than many of our peers, we need our residents and businesses to stay focused on COVID-related safety, as 5 cases per day is still a serious number of cases. So I hope that gives you a little background as to how Powhatan stacks up against our cohorts throughout the state.
Thank you, Mr. Smither. Any questions for Mr. Smither on his presentation? If not, we'll go to our first public comment period. Please give your name, your address. We will allow you 3 minutes if you're speaking for an individual. We will allow you 5 minutes if you're speaking for a group. Mr. Smither, do we have anybody wishing to comment remotely?
1 second. I do not see.
Take your time.
Mr. Wood, do you see anybody online? I can't see him here. Let me know who they are and if you can introduce them to. Mr. Sneed, are you online? If so, would you please unmute and talk to us? Thank you. Mr. Sneed? I think you're still muted. Our second caller was who, Mr. Sawyer? Okay. Mr. Sneed, one more chance, just in case you're still muted, we can't hear you. Okay, thank you.
For Mr. Smead and anyone else who weren't able to get through, we will have a second public comment period at the end of the meeting. So if there are problems, hopefully we can get them worked out where you can join us for that second public comment. Now we'll move to new business, discussion of the 2021 legislative priorities. Mr. Smither.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Each year prior to the General Assembly session, we invite our local legislative team out to visit and discuss any initiatives that could benefit Powhatan County. This year, Delegate Ware and Senator Hashmi have accepted our invitation to talk just before our December 10th joint school board meeting at a 5:30 time frame. Mr. Sawyer provided to you by email today a list of last year's legislative requests, things that we were looking for help on at the same time part of the year. These items include a few items that we would suggest keeping on the list for this year. Broadband assistance, some help with Beaumont Juvenile Facility, possibly some ideas of using that facility at Beaumont for either public projects or parks. We'd like to reiterate our Greenfield Ridge landfill opposition. And also, there's a reimbursement language last year. We asked for DSS reimbursement for administrative costs for the Department of Social Services. In addition, staff has identified a couple other areas we would like to tee up on the 10th. And that would be, as you know, our EDA, currently the state requires us to have 7 members on our Economic Development Authority. We would like that to have the same flexibility that Goochland went out and got a couple of years ago, to have only 5 members on EDA. It helps a little bit with recruiting good members and also with quorums. So we'd like to get the same exemption that Goochland got in 2018 to allow us for 5 EDA board members. And also, we'd like the registrar suggesting some language that would help her with the NAAV program, which is a no excuse absentee voting program that was instituted this past year for the 45 days ahead of that election. It was an expensive and time-consuming process for her staff, and we want for hopefully some relief in that area from the General Assembly. So we think that might be well received after this past election. But our goal tonight was to ask you as a board, is there anything else that you, in the next 2 weeks, if you can let us know anything that you think might be items that we ought to consider. We took us some time to put together those requests. So we want to give you a little heads up that the 10th was coming, and anything we can do to better position Powhatan with our legislature, that'd be great.
Any requests or questions for staff tonight, board members? If not, as Mr. Smithers says, we have until the 10th. I wouldn't suggest waiting till the 10th. But if you have something that you would like staff to further investigate, to research, to bring to the meeting on the 10th with our elected officials, please do so, okay? That brings us to a presentation of Parks and Recreation Master Plan. Mr. Smither.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Tonight we have with us Mr. Chris Just. Is Josh Cavanis with us here tonight too? He's not, okay. With us from the Parks and Rec Advisory Commission, Director of Public Works, Ramona Carter, Mary Ann Woodall, who manages our Parks and Rec programs. Mrs. Carter and Mr. Schutz will provide you with some information on the Parks and Rec Master Plan. Later on, Mrs. Carter will circle back with some information about the capital improvement budget and how it impacts the items you see in this master plan. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Carter. Thank you.
Welcome. Good evening. A little bit louder.
It's a little bit closer. I did also want to point out that Cameron Palmore is here. He is also a member of the Parks and Rec Advisory Commission.
Welcome.
I wanted to start by thanking you for allowing us to address the board and discuss the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. I wanted to start by giving you a little bit of history because this was actually something that was started by the previous board. And just to let you know how this plan came to be. So in FY 2019, in the CIP, the board allocated $35,000 for a recreation needs study. And then in January of 2019, we hired Pros Consulting through a collaborative procurement process. And then in FY 2020 CIP, the board allocated an additional $60,000 for the second phase. And that was a 10-year CIP and a capital improvement plan that addressed the community needs identified in the needs survey, the first phase. And then in January of 2020, the master plan was complete, and we were planning on presenting it to the board in February and March so that the CIP items could be included in the FY21 budget process. And then COVID hit, and then we had a new county administrator. So now we are here today before you, and thank you for allowing us to be here. I'm going to ask Chris Schutz, who is the current chairman of the Parks and Recreation Advisory Commission. He's going to provide you some information on the process of gathering the information to prepare the plan, and we have a PowerPoint presentation.
I would like to repeat that gratitude for allowing us to come before you tonight. We take the position that we hold as a commission seriously, and we're we're trying to look to for ways to better the parks and recreational environment in Powhatan County. This was a great foundation stone for us to move forward and start to try to figure out how to find means of funding after seeing what the needs are. And it's no surprise there are a lot of needs that we do have as a county for parks and recreation expansion. I'm not gonna work. Would you advance the slide? I might, okay. The initial phase of the study involved an online component where surveys were sent out to residents of the community. And PROS administered that survey and took care of sending it out, receiving it, processing the data. And it was done in May of 2019 through SurveyMonkey, if you are familiar with that platform. And it was developed in partnership with the county. It wasn't something they did in a vacuum. And of the total number of surveys that were sent out there through public announcements and downloads, 540 were completed, which represented 2,071 residents in the county. Based on that, PROS looked at the number of respondents that they received information from and looked at the total cross-section of the county. An important component of the study is to make sure that it is statistically valid. No survey and study is really worth anything unless you ensure that it is statistically valid. And they did determine that the study was statistically valid. The next component of what they did was to administer the second phase of the study, which was to, by phone calls, email, and in-person interviews, they compiled additional data. And of 421 surveys that were actually completed in that second component, they achieved a 95% level of confidence in the responses that they received. And you can see the margin of error they came up with was fairly minimal. Their goal was to have a statistically valid survey with 350 respondents, and they received 421. This is a scatter plot across the county that shows the respondents' locations. And the important part of that is in terms of making sure something is statistically valid in this type of study, they wanted to make sure that the county was represented fully. This is one of the means that they use is they look at a data plot overlay on the county to see where the respondents came from. And you can see that it hits all areas of the county. There are some gaps, but overall, it's a pretty fair distribution. You can see it looks like it's kind of tilted a little bit to the east, which is representative of the county tip to the east. And it's a little lighter in the west, but still that maintains the statistical validity. In the study, they looked at breaking down the needs 3 ways. We have our basic needs, which are for critical maintenance items. It's life cycle stuff that needs to be done. And there is a significant number of those items that are on the list, and they stay on the list based on the resources that we currently have in the county. The second is looking at what needs are for sustainable projects that the county residents have responded are needs, specific needs within the county. And then the third bucket of money in the study that they looked at was kind of those far-reaching goals. If we had unlimited resources based on the demographics of the county, what would we go for if money was no object? So they came up with a list of those kind of far-reaching goals that we would have. I will turn it back over to Ramona here for her to get into the CIP items. It's actually the right one. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. I also wanted to add, we were talking about the surveys that before they actually did the online or the mail-in survey, they had several focus group meetings where the consultant came into the county and interviewed. They had a makeup of business owners and athletic groups, and everybody participated, and they got feedback on what people thought the needs were, and we used that to develop the questions in the survey. So, and I just wanted to go back actually to the one slide with the buckets, just to give you some examples of these various buckets, to get an idea of what we're talking about. So the sustainable projects are projects to maintain what we already have. So that would be like upgrading our lighting. The second bucket is to expand on services, so additional services or expanding facilities to improve them. And an example of that is a dog park, because we don't currently have that service in the county. And then the visionary, the one project that we really had in this bucket was the phase 3 of Fighting Creek Park. So when they were developing the 10-year CIP, the assumptions that the consultant made, one is that it must be financially viable. So a small rural county, of course, cannot afford a $50 or $60 million project. So they were keeping it with what we could afford and bond in our financial picture. It includes projects that are likely to be implemented in a 10-year period, and we gave that requirement to the consultant. We said we wanted a 10-year CIP. So, and it had to be responsive to the data that was collected and the feedback that was received from the surveys to meet the needs that the community was identifying. And it had to be consistent with other planning efforts. And this was other departments' planning efforts, but also the private development in the community where housing was proposed to be developed and the land use plan. So in the first bucket, the sustainable projects. Now these, the totals that you see are for the whole 10-year period. So like the first project was a ADA improvements, putting in sidewalks and ramps and things to get to the bleach so people could get to the bleachers. It was $500,000 over 10 years. So it's $50,000 a year is how we broke that out. And the same with the furniture, fixtures, equipment improvements. This is like fencing, backstops. And again, it's $500,000 over 10 years. The athletic field lighting, that's $1 million. And we actually ended up breaking that into 2 projects, $500,000 each, and we split it amongst, it's not an annual cost. We split it into 2 projects over that 10-year period. And then irrigation improvements, $100,000, $10,000 over each year over the 10-year period. And then a trail renovation. That project is based on doing maintenance and gravel and removing trees and things like that on our trails, on our current trail system. So then the expanded services, this is adding levels of service that we don't currently have. So shade over spectators areas, that was $50,000, and that was more like a 1-year funding. Additional batting cages, an archery range was identified, restrooms for the playgrounds, and the administration complex is the Turner Sports Complex, the Village Complex, and then the animal shelter. So the one I wanted to highlight here is the animal shelter, because it's a $500,000 price tag. And you think a dog park cannot possibly be $500,000. So this was lumped in, it was a $50,000 for the dog park. And then the rest of it was for restrooms, which are very expensive. All right, and then the third pot of money, of course, I mentioned was the Fighting Creek Park. So multi-purpose field expansion, baseball field expansion, and then the Trails Master Plan. This was to develop a plan for adding trails. And part of the reason we wanted to do this was for grants. There's several grants out there, but you have to have a plan and kind of shovel-ready projects. So this will help us focus our attention and help get that grant money. And then the Pocahontas Middle School, that is a master plan for how we're going to develop that site, the fields around there, and blend it in with the gym use. So here's just some conceptual plans of the multi-purpose fields. And that at the bottom is the current Fighting Creek Park. And then future stadium baseball fields. Sorry, I just want to make sure I covered everything.
Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, I just want to emphasize that part of what we're doing as staff right now is looking at this list. And we met last Thursday, I think, Ramona, and went through these projects in detail as a staff. And we'll come back to, before you get to your December 10th workshop, we'll have all these projects laid out in detail for your review. And their recommendations as to how we phase these in timing wise. But we don't expect you to leave this meeting today with an understanding of all these projects. You'll have that in the next couple of weeks before our December 10th meeting. But it's all part of the 10-year CIP process, and how we might push certain projects depending on how it falls in the rest of the CIP into different years. But that's all coming in the next couple of weeks, as opposed to anything we're expecting you to do tonight.
So, Mr. Smith, if I understand correctly, you're going to be coming forward within the 10-year CIP with projects that you, staff, are recommending, and they could come from any of the three buckets.
We could cover any of the three buckets, and they're wrestling with the same resources that the rest of the county CIP is wrestling with. So, but we plan on addressing Ms. Carter's presentation tonight somewhere in our 10-year CIP for your review. And we'll recommend to you certain ways of innovating, whether it's county money, debt, or whatever process, or grants. We'll have that all packaged up for your December 10th presentation.
Well, let me follow up just briefly. I don't want to get too far ahead of us, but what were you going to be providing us from Parks and Recs, or for Parks and Recs, with that 10-year CIP? Are you going to be balancing that with other county department requests and using your economic model to be able to show us how all the projects relate to the 10-year CIP?
Yes, sir. In general, when we present to you our suggested 10-year CIP for all departments, including Parks and Rec, we'll use that in the background throughout the spring of next year. As you're developing an operating budget, we'll have this 10-year CIP on the shelf, looking at it, making sure we can afford it. And it'll always be part of our combined operating and capital improvement process.
And for the public, we're going to be, as Mr. Smithers says, showing off here in the future what he has developed with the economic model. For the first time, we will be able to toggle projects to see directly how it impacts our budget, our fund balance, and our 10-year CIP and debt capacity. We've never had that ability before in the county. But thanks to Mr. Smither and staff, board will now be treated with that information as we go through our decision-making with the budget and 10-year CIP. So that was the reason I was asking those questions, Mr. Smither.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to add where they got those dollar amounts that you see in those charts and that you will see in the CIP. The consultant worked with staff, and we based it on projects that had been done previously in the county, similar projects in the state of Virginia, and then similar projects nationally. And the consultant worked with us to get those price tags. And so how we prioritize those dollar amounts in the 10-year CIP is the Parks and Rec Advisory Commission. We actually sat down as a group and went through each project and decided based on their familiarity with the county and the needs, which year we thought that those projects would fall into. So you'll see that in the CIP and that's just kind of background on why we put them or how they ended up in those various years.
Mr. Chairman, this is Larry. I have a question for Ramona.
Please, Mr. Norbeck. Mr. Cox, I'll get with you next.
Sorry, Bill, if I cut you out. I can't see you
No,
right
go
now.
ahead.
I can see Ramona. Hey, Ramona. Couple questions, actually. Number one, when you were putting up the slide of the proposed, Fighting Creek field extensions and price tags, did that include parking lots, lighting, and the whole package, or what is in there?
Yes, it would be parking expansion, lighting, any bathroom upgrades that would be necessary for the additional people that it would be serving, grading, stormwater, that our prices are. And of course, they're very high level estimates. So, you know,
Right.
we're just kind, yeah.
Okay, and then the dog park, maybe I missed this connection, but the restrooms you spoke of, they are for people at the dog park, or are these separate restrooms that are animal control related? I missed that connection.
We're actually proposing for bathroom facilities that will, because where we were looking at putting the dog park is very close to the back side of Fighting Creek Park where the disc golf is. So we were thinking kind of a combined regional type bathroom that would help serve all of those facilities.
Okay, regional bathroom, I like that concept. Okay, because obviously you can have a dog park without restrooms. I know we've been to a couple in that area, and so that just made me curious. And certainly my dog has never expressed a need to have a restroom facility. So, okay, thank you.
The only follow-up question I'd have, Mr. Norvik, is, you know, what did you do?
That, we'll have that as a sidebar discussion sometime over a Dunkin' donut, if that's okay.
Yes, sir. Mr. Cox.
Mrs. Carter, just so I understand, we've got 3 buckets and we've got proposed projects in each of those.
Correct.
If I heard you correct, and I just want to confirm that those projects are a culmination of discussions between our consultant, our committee, and staff.
Correct.
So all 3 of y'all own those.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cox. Other questions for staff? Mr. Barley?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, thank you. So when I add the 3 buckets up, it's about $10 million
Yes.
over a 10-year period of time if we're doing this on a 10-year CIP.
And you will notice that the biggest piece of that is Fighting Creek Phase 3.
Right.
It's a big price tag.
The,
And that's one of the reasons we bumped it. I think we put it in FY '26, I think, is somewhere around there. It's
yeah,
a few years out because.
that's the multi-purpose field expansion, 3.2 million for that. And then the Fighting Creek baseball field expansion is 2.5 million. I had the pleasure a year ago of visiting them while they were having a meeting, the Parks and Rec Department, and it was a very worthwhile meeting for me to go in and see the level of participation and effort on behalf of that group. And so thank you, Cameron, Chris, and the others that are involved in it. You know, my question is, as I listen to this and the $50,000 dog park, I'm okay with that. And now I'm going to go over here to the bathroom part. And you made the comment that the bathrooms are very expensive. A $450,000 bathroom, that's a little more than expensive, in my opinion. Okay. And, you know, I've seen the bathroom expense related to what's been, I guess, projected at Turner Field. Just what kind of bathroom is this?
One of the big expenses with that particular location is that the water and sewer is not right there. So it actually would involve a pump station to pump up the sewer to our gravity line. And then we would have to extend water lines as well. So it's some infrastructure, and then it is, the fixtures are expensive.
How far is it?
We don't actually have a location that we've focused in on. It's just kind of general at this point.
How many acres is the park?
I don't know.
215 sound close?
Yeah, that's close, yeah.
You know, as I look through this, and that's huge. I mean, that's massive piece of land. So I'm going to step out here on this island for a moment. We have a county that is big, east to west. We have 215 acres for a park. It's a lot of acres. Has it ever been any topic of conversation that we peel off some of that and maybe sell it and have some funds to go to the eastern part of the county or maybe to some other area in the county and make more of a, looking at the packet or the actual package I'll put together, a community park?
And I think that's what the consultant, what they concluded in this whole process was that the way the county is situated geographically, that our money would be best invested in making a regional park where we would be bringing people into the center of Powhatan. That was where the Fighting Creek Park expansion came in, is that they thought that would be bringing it all together. So it made it like a shrine for people to come to, and, you know, it would be well known around the other communities that we want to go to Powhatan because they have this great facility and complex.
I've spent some time up there and we're well known for that now.
That's true.
There are, Mary Ann's seen me walking around up there. So I went to a girls softball tournament. And I actually mentioned to the chairman sometime in the past about how you could make money by virtue of that. But we don't do that here in Powhatan, do we? But we should do that, in my
Agreed.
opinion,
I
okay?
agree.
Just me. I don't speak for anybody else up here, but I think that that's something that we should talk about as a board of how we can find a way to, we host our own tournaments as opposed to renting our fields out for $75 a day, right?
And so I will just add, if we're hosting, we need staff.
Well,
We need
you-
people.
At the last meeting we were at, I mean, I brought that point out, I think pretty clearly that the staff is an issue without any doubt. But you know, those are the kind of problems I think we would like to have. I would like to be able to talk about those kind of problems and figure out how to, you know, come up with solutions. But the bathroom's a $450,000 bathroom. I think anybody's going to have a hard time figuring out how we spend $450,000 on a bathroom. I get the part we've got a pump station and all that.
And the one over at Turner had a concession stand in it as well. So it wasn't just bathrooms.
Then we should tell the public it has a concession stand and a bathroom as opposed to it's just a bathroom, because then the public says, oh my gosh, it's a $400,000 bathroom.
What were you gonna say? Oh, I think it was in the CIP, it was identified
As both?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was the price tag was based on recent bathrooms and concession stands in Henrico County that were of similar size.
Right. Well, in the Parks and Rec Department, I mean, from my perspective, I like what you guys are putting out here. I would like to figure out a way that we can put this plan together. I think that we spend, and I'm not being, I don't want to be short-sighting anyone, but it would stand the county good to be able to put some financial funding towards Parks and Rec for kids, adults, seniors, and others in this community. And I think most of us up here probably agree with that to some degree. It's just how we do that. But I certainly appreciate y'all's time and effort. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Powerly.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Cox.
just a couple of thoughts in terms of your buckets. You have $50,000 in trail renovations and $100,000 for trail master plan. So you got $150,000 for trails against a $10 million price tag. And the public has told you through your surveys that that is their number one interest. So I would guess as you begin to work through this, okay, and we get to a real CIP, is wow, how well are we matching our spending against what our citizens have told us? You know, this plan is 155 pages of how to spend money. Okay, I got it. And so I will feel better as we get closer to aligning our dollars to what the citizens said they wanted. And so it's not that you haven't, it's just that's one of the things that I'm really worrying about.
Well, and maybe just to clarify, the $50,000 was just maintenance. That
Right,
was
understood that.
That was, and then the trail master plan was to identify where we could expand to get the needs met of the community and also help us get that grant money.
Understand that too, but at the end of the
So-
day, it's $150,000, okay, over 10 years, and we haven't made any real improvement in terms of expanding our trails, okay? But at the same time, we're spending $1 million on lighting, we're spending $450,000 on a concession stand bathroom, okay? We can build, as Mr. Norvig, who's listening, last time we talked about this, talked about the kind of house you could build for that. So it's not that this is bad or good, it's just you've identified, you've done a really nice job of identifying the things that our citizens value. And it doesn't seem like the dollars are necessarily following them at the same pace that the citizens raise their hand. That's just a comment
And-
Mr. Cox, I'd love to inject some because Ramona's being modest a little bit. During our staffing meeting that last week, and we did a planning session on CIP, when we got to this exact same topic, our input from our internal staff was, okay, we're going to get 50-50 grants on these projects. We went ahead and reallocated in our initial draft, 2.5 miles of pavement for walking trails.
So what
twice.
you're telling me is hold on and wait and see. Okay,
So
great.
we realized 100,000 was just a study, but we wanted to put some numbers to the study, so.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, it's Larry again.
Yes, Mr. Norvig.
First off, just a side comment about the $450,000 bathrooms. When I was flying for the Navy, I was right there where we had the huge controversy about the $700 toilet that was going in some Navy airplanes. And that now pales in comparison. It was making, believe it or not, front page headlines. So I've been through this before. The point that I want to make is I want to second Mr. Cox strongly there. And I think, Ned, you've already expressed you got it covered. When Chris was presenting what the people of Powhatan want, and then I saw where the numbers were falling out, that thought came to my mind too. So I just wanted to sort of put an exclamation point behind it. Probably more than any other department in our county, Parks and Rec is what the people want. That's how I see it. They're very clear about how they want to spend their leisure time, what they value for their children, senior citizens, and how they get exercise, and what groups and sports teams can participate on what kind of fields, what kind of courts, et cetera. That is a big deal. It's part of what makes life worth living, right? And we're finding that out in these COVID days, how much we miss it. So definitely, I'll be looking when this plan starts unfolding more. I will be looking to see just how well the survey responses are matching up with the dollar amounts. And I get it. The devil's in the details. There are things that you can get grants for that you can't for other things, et cetera. So thank you for doing all the work. And this one, we really need to pay attention to what the people are looking for in quality of life in Powhatan. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Norvig. Any other questions, comments for staff? If not, I would like to thank you, Ramona, Chris, Cameron, Marianne. Thank you for your hard work. We appreciate it. this point, we will have our second public comment period. Anyone wishing to come forward, please give your name, your address. We will provide you with 3 minutes. If you're representing a group, we will allow you 5 minutes. Mr. Smither, will you monitor anybody wishing to come on remotely?
Yes, sir. We do not have anybody signed up remotely.
Not seeing anyone coming down the aisle, I will close the second public comment period. County Administrator comments.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. As you know, the Board of Supervisors worked hard this past summer on developing the strategic plan for the county, and now we're trying to get some public input to help us crystallize that plan. Tomorrow night and Thursday night, tomorrow night will be at the Huguenot Public Safety Fire Station number 2. At 5 o'clock, we have an open house session, and we'll have plenty of our staff members there designed to answer any questions the public might have and to gather any input that the public might want to provide us on the strategic plan. And the same thing on Thursday night, 5 to 7 o'clock at the Landmark Center. We'll be repeating. So anybody that has any comments or wants to provide, or learn more about anything in the strategic plan, please come out on Tuesday or Thursday night. We'd love to help. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smither. Board comments.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, please, Mr. Barley.
I'd just like to take a moment to thank our veterans here in the county, nationwide and everywhere. We haven't had a meeting since Veterans Day, and I'd like to take an opportunity to thank them for their service.
Thank you, Mr. Barley. Mr. Smither and I had this conversation the other day. It's been a long time concern of mine as to why everybody gets off on my day. Never understood that. Anyway, any other comments? Mr. Smither, I believe you've got a motion to go into closed session you'd like to read.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Whereas the Board of Supervisors of Powhatan County desires to discuss in closed meeting the following matters: discussion or consideration of the acquisition of real property for a public purpose, or the disposition of a publicly held real property, where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body concerning convenience. Whereas pursuant to 2.2-3711 of the Code of Virginia, such discussions may occur in closed meetings. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Supervisors of Powhatan County does hereby authorize discussion of the aforesaid matters in the closed meeting.
I will make that motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? Mr. Smither, you will call the roll.
Yes, sir. Ms. Carmack?
Aye.
Mr. Cox?
Aye.
Mr. Byerly?
Aye.
Mr. Nordvig?
Aye.
Mr. Williams?
All right. We're now in closed session. I'm going to move that we come out of closed session. Mr. Smither, will you read the certification and call the roll?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. To the best of your knowledge, were the only matters discussed in the closed public meeting, business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements, and only such public business matters were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened or heard, discussed, or considered in the closed meeting. To that extent, Ms. Carmack,
Yes. Aye.
Mr. Cox,
Aye.
Mr. Byerly,
Aye.
Mr. Nordvig,
Aye.
Mr. Williams.
Aye. And with that, I will close this meeting or adjourn this meeting at 7:48 PM.